Let's take a look at layer styles in Photoshop today. I just have a text layer in the background. Layer styles can work on any isolated object, any selection. You can do a lot of creative things. Don't think it just works on text. And you get at layer styles by either clicking on the FX down here, the new layer styles icon, and choosing one of these, or double clicking, not on the name or the icon, but out here in a blank space, you double click, and this huge dialog box typically opens up right on top of your artwork. So the first thing you need to do is position your artwork so you can see it and the layer styles dialog box without them fighting for position on the stage. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm just going to move this up here. And now, layer styles. What do you want to use? And I'll just pull this down to show you that there's nothing here yet until you accept this. And typically, the one that's used more than any other is either bevel and emboss or drop shadow. So let's start with our old favorite, the drop shadow. And if you click the checkbox, all of a sudden a drop shadow appears, but this didn't change. It's really important that you jump off this default and not just click that checkbox, but actually click on the name, and then you get the options for the drop shadow. And I watch people moving this around to change the direction and how far is the drop shadow away. Don't do that. Just move your cursor out here and pull the drop shadow around. And you can position this anywhere you want. And if you want, you can fine tune it here and you can type in a specific degree that the light is coming from. But if you use a drop shadow, two things. Number one, the opacity is typically set too high. So let's crank that down a little bit so the drop shadow isn't so intense. And number two, the default color of a shadow is black. And in the real world, the Impressionists knew shadows aren't black. Shadows inherit the color of the environment around them. So right now, our environment is just this blue. So let's click on that. Did you see that? This color well right here. Click. We get our color picker up. Come out and sample that blue color. There it is. So now with multiply, our drop shadow now isn't that harsh black, but it's actually the color of our background. And if you want, you can come down, try to come straight down and choose a deeper shade of that if you want this to be a little darker. And yes, you can play around with the opacity to change that. And then what is spread and size? Well, there's only one way to find out. You play around with these, right? So what's spread doing? Don't like that so much. Command Z. Z's not going to work. So take the spread back to wherever. And size is going to soften up those edges. Okay, a drop shadow, not always clearly defined edges. Let's pull this back. How did we get back to black? Select this. There we go. And there is drop shadows. Now let's come back. We'll play around with some of these other choices, but remember, lower the opacity and choose a color that's somewhere inside your document that reflects the environment. Black is typically not the color you want.